Evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Module 5, EDL859, and my name is Michael Graham. So getting into the 10 sources we looked at, the first two I'd like to look at were dealing with assessment and evaluation and basically the differences between the two terms. And I think a lot of times people do get confused with the difference between assessment and evaluation, oftentimes used incorrectly. Assessment is used to identify individual students' weaknesses and strengths, according to the first article. And evaluation can and should, however, be used as an ongoing management and learning tool to improve learning, the same source. Assessment is a process used to improve a performance or outcome, and evaluation is a process used to determine the quality of performance. Okay? Assessment's more of that finite snapshot in time. Evaluations can be used over long term. That's why we are assessed for state assessments, and that's why we are evaluated as teachers. That's kind of the way I always use to distinguish between the two. So why is assessment important? Of course, it provides us with feedback. It gives us the idea that we know the kids or whoever we are testing got that information. Whether or not that information is vital or not, that's kind of where the evaluation piece comes in, but giving us that assessment tool is vitally important. How we use it in teaching and learning, we must always remember that kind of goes into this greater detail on the second article here. We must always remember that grading is an aspect of student assessment, but doesn't constitute its totalitarian nature. So basically what that means is when we assess students, yes, it's nice to have that paper pencil test. It's nice to have that book widgets test that comes out and it gives you the nice, honest, straight up answers and you don't have to grade anything. But assessment and evaluation is also key to learn students from their participation in class, how they're talking, things that go into greater detail than a paper pencil test can. Because for those kids that we know that don't read well or don't write well in English, their only way to communicate and show us they know us will come from that verbal assessment piece that we get from their daily interactions in class. Which brings me to working towards cultural responsive assessment practices. The fifth article that I have picked. This article deals with more of the making sure our assessments are not culturally biased, which is a difficult issue that I face in my district, and I'll get more into that because we just don't have a lot of culture in this district. I love the piece here, though, that it hit this author that he needed to understand his students first and use his own classroom assessments to actually understand their knowledge. My assessments change every hour. I assess some classes different than I assess other classes just because I have different students and I have different student needs and I have different student makeups in each one of my classes. So for me, knowing my students and making sure that they get the assessment that is appropriate for them is what this article basically leans into, and that's vitally important. Now, keeping students at the center with culturally relevant performance assessments. Performance assessments are a lot different. If you've never done one, we do them for 7th grade social studies here in Kansas. I love them. It gives kids the ability to be creative, and at the heart of this shift to student-centered models, okay, it allows them to kind of take the lead, okay, and it shows you their kind of existence. The one I do in my classroom for 7th grade social studies is we do a restaurant evaluation, if you will. I give the kids information over the course of the year about different cultures, different areas of the globe, and they have to pick a country out of any of the numbers that are behind my back. You can see all of them back there. I have a world map behind the back of my room. They pick an area and a food that they would like to basically build a restaurant around. And they have to kind of explain why they picked that, what the cuisine is, create a menu, do all that stuff. It really works well for tying everything together for world cultures class. Now, the challenge is measuring well-being in schools and students' well-being. Our district does a phenomenal job with this. This kind of goes into this perspective that the heart of what makes a student successful is making sure that their needs are taken care of. Both of these articles kind of go into that. I love the definition here. Students' well-being is defined in this report refers to the psychological, cognitive, social, and physical functioning and capabilities of students need to live a happy and fulfilling life. We need to understand that not only just their academic success need to be taken care of, but we need to make sure that they're progressing socially and emotionally and psychologically, being successful in our class. It kind of ties into the way we construct our classroom, the way we construct our lessons, the way we talk to students daily basis out in the hallways, in the classroom, kind of building them up as a whole general human being. And then a little bit into ineffective teaching models. I don't want to spend a huge time on this because we kind of all know those ineffective models. One of the big things I loved about this first article, Ineffective Assessments, Part 5, was that it does go into the fact that we don't assess and test very much on critical thinking with standardized testing. We all grew up with standardized testing, ACTs, SATs, all that stuff. It doesn't allow for thinking. It does not allow for critical thinking. It produces robots. That A is this and B is that and C is that. So it doesn't enter into that. So we need to get to that point. Okay. This last article dealt with Zimbabwe. I thought it was really interesting to see how foreign countries basically have the same problems we do in our education system. So, evaluate and coordination in our district here in USD 261. It's one of the few times I've had to actually move that. I apologize. In Hazel USD 261, I feel that coordination between the schools support equity, digital industry, and academic and non-academic systems in varying degrees of quality. I think that the upper and middle schools do a great job of making sure that digital literacy and equity is met. We're 1-to-1 district, 6-to-12. We offer a lot of services both in school and out school with the Gear Up program, after school tutoring, and Spark. We have tons and tons of programs that help with any shortcoming parents may have. We make sure that most every need is met for the kids. However, K-5 area, a lot of that is dropped. We just don't put a lot of time into our younger students, and they face a much deeper divide between the haves and the have-nots. And I think that's really, and I hate to pile on our elementary schools. I think that, unfortunately, that's a lot of where we face a lot of our income gaps. They're much more prominent there. We have our Hazel is definitely a community that is set up that the rich live in one area and the not so rich live in the other areas. And those schools, you can see that in the test scores, unfortunately. And you can see that in our district, we do struggle with equity and digital literacy because a lot of our K-5 kids come to us in middle school, and depending on what school they go to, they are either way far behind in terms of that kind of stuff, and especially in their academic systems as well, or they're right on where they should be and fewer ahead. Proposal for improvement. I just can't think of any strategies in terms of how I believe USD could do a better job in this. I think at the upper high schools they do. I just don't know. One thing that we do culturally wise that kind of ties us all together is the one book, one school program. We picked a book. It's this one right here. I'm going to plug it right now. Yes, Fish in a Tree. If you've never seen Fish in a Tree, it does a great job with my students that are our SES and our kids. Sorry. And they get tied and brought into, because this main character in the core story is a lot of my students, low SES. She has dyslexia. She struggles in school. And so that helps tie everybody together because everybody's involved in this. So key questions. Types of assessment used: ACT, pre-ACT, regular teacher-generated test, FastBridge, state testing, pre-K evals, IEP testing, ELA testing, performance-based assessments. Those are just some of the ones that we use in our district. Required in my building, of course, is state testing, regular teacher-generated testing, performance-based assessments. I did forget FastBridge testing, but that's mainly from our math and ELA. I don't deal with FastBridge. I'm a social studies teacher, so I did totally forget to put that underneath that one. Gaps in USD 261. Really, the major gap that we have is our cultural appropriate testing. We just have never had a very diverse student population in terms of culture, and we just have not needed much testing in that area until recently, and I think we're lagging behind in that area. Assessment plan. In my building, we have a curriculum review committee that goes over all the assessment data to address the weaknesses in the curriculum based on how we do on state assessments. I'm on that committee, as we did just bring in a new social studies department head, which is me now. And we do have that meeting tomorrow night, actually, to go over all the data from last year and continue on our process. We are currently in the process of trying new math curriculum out to help fill the gaps in our students' learning. And I think next year we're looking at adopting a new ELA program. So that's kind of where we're at there. Here are the slides and sources I used. And if you guys have any questions, I know this was brief, but you guys have a great night and enjoy.